actually got one of my photographs from the pier. I've got beautiful sunrise photos.
Don't know where that came from. Mayor, councillors, thank you for your time today. My name is Blair Hughes, and obviously you're all aware of Paul Zarnan from the New Brighton Business Association. Hopefully you are. I am the owner or co-owner of Paperplus New Brighton, which includes the operations of Paperplus, Kiwi Bank and New Zealand Post. I speak to you today as one of the leading businesses of New Brighton, and certainly one of the leading businesses to reinvest greatly in the area for the future. I engage daily with a large number of people who come to New Brighton, and my branch is considered a hub of the community. Firstly, I'm aware that some of what I'm discussed will already have been covered and may already have been answered. Unfortunately, I was at work, so, I apologise for this, so give me a bit of leniency. However, all my points are vitally important, and I'm sure you would agree in light of the strong reaction with the large number of submissions from our area that many feel the same. First off, in regards to the long-term plan, I'm greatly concerned at the lack of planning and resources placed for the areas known as South Shore, South New Brighton, North New Brighton, and especially the key activity centre of New Brighton. These areas have long been undervalued and under-resourced, and no true future planning has been put in place and enacted upon within the last 18 years. To truly realise the asset that this coastal community is, the council must correctly invest, lead and encourage others to invest, as is your position as leaders of the city. Having visited other cities and seen the work and commitment that these councils have placed in similar areas to ours, and the results from that commitment, I've always been disappointed with the efforts and resources placed towards ours. Now is the time to reverse that situation. Given that the LTP is a document planning for the next 10 years of funding and resource allocation, now is the time for the council to show that it truly cares for all of its population within its boundary. Firstly, I would like to discuss funding towards the Pages Road Bridge, and I appreciate this may have already been discussed, Leanne. This is an important link across the river and must be returned to full usability and enhanced. In this instance, I suggest you have the perfect opportunity, given the red zone available, to place a new bridge slightly north, as had been planned. To deny the community the full return of its asset, in my opinion, would be considered a broken promise, given the assurances previously. Now, to the lack of investment in public spaces in New Brighton. As the council is one of the largest property owners, it is your responsibility to lead others and invest wisely. I appreciate that it is difficult with the fractured ownership of the properties in the area. However, if true planning and resources were placed into the area, then others would invest and follow. In this case, true planning is one of the real issues here. In reference to this, an example would be the recent replacement of asphalt on 2 different occasions recently, thus destroying the ground artwork costing $30,000, which was completed earlier this year. This was not a full replacement of the asphalt, and as well as destroying the artwork has created a patchwork appearance. This shows a true lack of care for the area. Another example is the need for replacement of convenience items such as rubbish bins and water fountains. The issues relating to the rubbish bins is well known, and thus I will only add that this is well overdue. As to the water fountains, some have been replaced, but I wish to point out the lack of foresight given the choice of installation. This lacks the commitment in the planning of the area. With the resources and true careful considered planning in this area, we could come alive, as suggested in the New Brighton Master Plan. I will point out the one on the left is the rubbish bin in New Brighton. The one on the right is certainly nowhere near us, if that makes you feel better. That's actually an Australian installation. Now, this leads to my last point, that there is essentially no funding allocated to the New Brighton Master Plan. I appreciate that this document has only recently been finalised. However, the lack of consideration of funding for this is of grave concern, given that it was inevitable that this document would be finalised. Then funding should have been placed into the LTB, as has been allocated to other master plans for other suburbs around the city. Thus, full funding for this must be placed in the LTP. This plan, as well as the great work that has been done by the New Brighton Business and Landowners Association, gives a roadmap to a long overdue staged redevelopment of the New Brighton area. My passion for this area knows no bounds, and there are many more points I could raise, but I know of many others who have spoken before me and others to come who are far better at discussing these points. I can only hope that you at last hear the voice of the people of this area, for the community spirit and feeling is so great in this area, and especially feeling that it's time for the council to value these suburbs and its peoples. This is your time to acknowledge the rights of the people of these areas to the same resources and care as the rest of the city. Don't continue to penalise us for living and working next to the ocean. Celebrate it. And finally, if I may, I would like to open the floor to our two councillors of the ward to hear their thoughts on how they feel about our resource level in the past 15 years.
No, I think that that's inappropriate. And the reason is that right at the very beginning of the process, I asked all councillors to confirm that they were here to represent the interests of the city as a whole. They actually have to set aside their ward interests. That's what the community boards come and submit on. So I think it's probably a bit unfair to ask people that haven't been around for 15 years in their council positions to comment on previous councils as well. So
absolutely understand. At your leave.
Yeah.
If anybody has
I'm
any
more
questions,
than happy as the former MP for the area to tell you what my views are, but I'll hold tight to those as well. I think that there is no question that the council has heard the New Brighton voice, and we commended Paul for doing something that had never been done before, which was to bring the business association together with the landowners. And that has never happened before. And the disconnect between the land ownership and the business owners has been problematic for a very, very long time. So I think we see an opportunity to partner with New Brighton in the way that hasn't been possible before. But and it's certainly something we'll be taking into account. But do we have questions for? Yes, David.
Thanks, Blair, for your passion and interest in the area. Certainly share that with you. With regards to the New Brighton Master Plan, although it's only recently been adopted or finalised, do you have any ideas of how you would like to prioritise some of the works that are in the Master Plan? What things do you think may or should be recognised before others?
I think that's probably a bit of a difficult question to answer because with the lack of resources over the last 18 years. It's the same as Lewis Hamilton going into the pit stop. You're asking me which wheel would I like to change. Unfortunately, there's a requirement now for all four. If you want to prioritise, that's fine, but we need everything. Unfortunately,
I know we need everything, but if you had to select one of them first, would you be looking at the extension of Aurum Ave ahead of the public transport infrastructure or new toilets? Or
I don't mind if I jump in here as well. Blair also sits on the executive of the New Brighton Business and Landowners Association. So what we talked about in the stage development platform was also starting with the aesthetics and amenity values, which I think we've sort of discussed today. And we did pitch in there as well about that stage development of year by year, which projects we saw coming out, starting with Aurum Avenue. Starting with Aurum Avenue is the first one that the Business and Landowners Association pitched. And then moving on to Marine Parade, then the pedestrian mall and the introduction of the Legacy project. I'd
agree that Aurum Avenue is a definite. I would also, we need to have a roadmap. We need to know that there's going to be a next step. We need to know exactly when that next step is going to be. Is it thus? Otherwise, we get a situation where we put a pier in and there's nothing to follow.
So previous master plans have always talked about starting at the beach and working inland. What's your response to that philosophy? I would start near the beach. I certainly think there's a possibility for a possible market square. We need to include it. We need to celebrate the fact that we're right next to it. That whole area needs to be developed.
And with respect to the regeneration as well, you're talking about public or private spaces? Because private spaces certainly from the foreshore, but public spaces I believe is a lot broader than starting from one end and working through. Oh, sorry. Did you catch any of that? Sorry.
Most of it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, for the private spaces, there's obviously vacant sections on the foreshore. It makes logical sense to start on that end, also bearing in mind the floodplain to the west of us. But for public spaces, it's a lot broader than starting from one side and moving through to the other, in my opinion.
Thanks. I think the weight of submissions that have come in have certainly given Council a clear direction and opportunity to go forward.
Good.
I will give you a piece of feedback that we did give one of the other submitters in relation to the Pages Road Bridge. is that the reason that it's being repaired rather than replaced now is that a repair will keep it safe and it will be monitored, so it's not going to be at risk. But the advice that we've received is that replacing it now before we've made decisions around the future use of the residential red zone land and also the Christchurch City Council roading network that's going to apply in that area. I mean, if we move the stop banks further back, that makes a huge difference as to where that bridge is best located and how it serves as the entranceway. So it's not a question of not putting it on the budget because we don't care about New Brighton or that the cost is too much. It's actually, this isn't the right time to make decisions about it until we've actually got that. So we've got on budget the money to repair it, and that will be done under the SCIRT program. The decision to rebuild it will be done under normal NZTA processes at the time that all of those decisions are able to be made.
Absolutely, I agree with that. I just feel that the community needs to know that that's how.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think that message may have been clouded, and that's possibly not your fault.
I think it was clouded, and I know it wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
So, Andrew.
Thank you very much. Now, I speak from my experience in Littleton, which has suffered from some of the redevelopment issues that New Brighton has suffered from, perhaps in a slightly different way. And I refer to the paragraph on page 2 of your submission, where you say, I appreciate that it's difficult with the fractured ownership of the properties in the area. However, if true planning and resources were placed into the area, then others would invest and follow. So essentially a catalyst approach. There are some of us would say that we need to go beyond that. And I think of what I'm going to say in the context of the new development Christchurch. There are some of us that would say that we need to go further by putting in place a framework to encourage amalgamation of titles, mechanisms to incentivise developments, and a more hands-on type approach. What's your view of that?
I would probably agree with that. Is that there are some landowners in that area which are trying to develop the area, and we need to support them. There is unfortunately some others that we prefer is that they need to be out. Unfortunately, that's one of those things. We need everybody working towards the right goal. If we need to amalgamate some of the titles down, then that's fine.
Excellent.
And strongly support those statements as well.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. Look, thank you very much, Blair, for coming in, and good to see you again. I've spent a lot of money in your shop, so
Continue to do so.
I'm sure I will continue to do so.
Thank you.